in court and denied bail. Frank James arraigned on a terror charge that could send the 62-year-old to prison for the rest of his life. Correspondent Tom Negevin is live at the federal courthouse in Brooklyn. Tom, what did James say to the judge today?
Not a whole lot, Nichole. This was a very quick court appearance. Asked if he understood his rights, understood the charges against him. He answered yes to both, did not enter a plea. And importantly, Nichole, we're still left to wonder about a motive behind this horrible attack. Now, Mr. James sat very quietly in federal court today here in Brooklyn, occasionally making notes, occasionally conferring with his court-appointed lawyers. Federal prosecutors calling Tuesday morning's attack an act that terrorized commuters, saying it was a blessing. It was not worse, and experts now saying to us that it may have been an issue of a malfunctioning gun and poor marksmanship that kept this from being a deadly event. There's also a lot of evidence against this 62-year-old. Photos entering and leaving the subway that appear to show him, surveillance video, a construction vest described by witnesses. The feds calling this attack premeditated, carefully planned. In all, at least 29 people injured in a variety of ways, including smoke inhalation, bullet fragments. 10 were shot. James allegedly popping smoke canisters in the Brooklyn subway, randomly opening fire around 8:24 a.m. on Tuesday. The next day, calling Crime Stoppers on himself, police sources tell us, arrested without incident in Manhattan's East Village. After that, others dropped the dime on him, too, as they like to say around here. Prosecutors also filed a letter to the court in advance of this hearing, and that's significant, asking that James be permanently denied bail pending trial, saying he poses a severe and ongoing risk to the community. The defense painting it a whole lot differently in the brief remarks they made out here after the hearing today. Listen.
What we do know is this. Yesterday, Mr. James saw his photograph on the news. He called Crime Stoppers to help. He told them where he was. Initial press and police reports in cases like this one are often inaccurate.
Now, just to recap the charges against him, Nichole, I know you talked about this off the top, and he does face a charge that could put him away for life. That's a federal statute prohibiting terroristic or violent attacks on mass transit systems. And here, of course, we're talking about the nation's largest and busiest coming under attack. The feds will also be charging him with crossing state lines. That's a bit more nuanced because he's a known offender in several other jurisdictions. Another risk factor they pointed out today that we haven't really talked about yet, and this is significant too, investigators during that frantic 30 hours in which he was at large in the city of New York traced him to an apartment and a storage locker in which they found additional ammunition and weapons as well. Nichole?
All right, Tom, thank you for that. All right, a lot of questions really do remain about the charge that Frank James is facing, a federal terrorism charge. So joining me now, Chicago attorney Steve Fagan. So, Steve, we're hoping that you can explain what it takes for this charge to be filed.
Sure. So you just mentioned a couple of the big elements that are required. Here, it's a terrorism on a mass transit, so you need mass transportation, which you obviously have. And the other element, which is really important in order to get something like this even started, is the idea, the report that Frank James crossed state lines in preparation for this. That's one of the two elements that really are prerequisites to proceeding with this kind of criminal charge.
All right, so Steve, we just heard Tom, alluding to more charges. What do you suspect, what additional charges will in fact be coming?
There could be firearms charges because apparently the firearm wasn't registered in the state of New York. We don't know the status of that yet. There can be attempted murder charges. There can be aggravated battery charges. All sorts of things can happen here. We don't know where he procured the firearms or other items that he used in this attack. So there are a number of possible charges that could be added.
There's so much, as you said, that we don't know in this case yet. How long do you think this trial could potentially play out?
Well, we don't even know if there's going to be a trial. It sounded like the defense is setting up that at least they believe there's a possibility. Of course, extremely early stages for them, too. They still need to know a lot more. There are some reports about a psychiatric examination. That may be simply the psychiatric screening that is done to a prisoner being taken in, or it may be that there is some belief that there may be a psychiatric element here, a mental health issue. whether this is going to be a plea or it's going to be a trial. This could take a long time. There's a lot of details. There's a lot of moving parts. You have 10 people who were shot, apparently another 20 to 30 people who were injured in various ways. The federal government is going to take their time. They're going to be very careful and very meticulous, I anticipate, in building their case.
Well, Steve, you mentioned that mental health evaluation. How much of a factor do you think the suspect's mental health could, in fact, play in this?
Well, if there is a mental health issue, it's going to be very serious for the issue for the attorneys, because any attorney needs the cooperation of their client, and their client to be able to cooperate with them, mentally understand what's going on in court and what they did and how they did things. And if that's an issue, that's going to need to be sorted through first.
Last question for you, Steve. We've learned now that Frank James, in fact, called Crime Stoppers. He is the one who called in the tip. He was then arrested. Will that play any part in this at all?
It could. So if there is a plea, certainly there are various ways that right now, the way it's charged, and this is one of the reasons there may be additional charges filed. The way things are charged right now is a life sentence. And generally speaking, attorneys look for ways to build a case for what is called downward departure in this federal sentencing scheme. One of those things is for the defendant to take responsibility for what they did. So there is the possibility that could enter into an argument for the defense that Mr. James is taking responsibility. But again, so much we don't know at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chicago Attorney Steve Fagan, thank you so much. We do appreciate your insight on that today, sir. Thank you. Well, thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.